The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with representatives from 200 worlds. Massive screens floated in the air, showing the faces of leaders who ruled entire star systems. Ancient species who had traveled between stars for thousands of years sat in their assigned seats, and in a small corner, almost forgotten, sat the human delegation. Humanity had been part of this council for only 89 years. In galactic terms, this was nothing. The species had been spacefaring for 50,000 years. The Dominion had conquered 6 star systems over 3,000 years. Humans were bobbies, newcomers. Most species barely remembered they existed. Ambassador, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, was presenting a boring trade dispute when everything changed. The Dominion wanted mining rights in a neutral zone. This zone happened to be near human territory. A young human diplomat named stood up. She was small compared to most aliens in the room. Her voice was calm and polite. The Galactic Council should know that humanity also has interests in this neutral zone. We request that this matter be discussed fairly before any decision is made. Laughter filled the chamber. It came from the massive hologram that dominated the center of the room. Overlord of the Dominion was a creature of scales and muscle, with eyes like burning coals. His mouth was full of sharp teeth, and all of them were showing as he laughed. "Did that animal just speak?" asked. His voice echoed through the chamber. "I was not aware the council allowed vermin to have opinions." Did not sit down. Her face showed no emotion. The human delegation formally requests respect in these proceedings. Laughed again, louder this time. "Respect. Your species has existed for what, a few thousand years? You have been in space for less than a century. You control one small planet and a handful of worthless colonies, and you dare to speak when the Dominion makes its will known." The chamber was silent. Some species looked uncomfortable. Others smiled, enjoying the show. No one spoke in defense of humanity. Leaned forward in his hologram, his eyes fixed on the human diplomat. "Let me be clear, little creature. The Dominion will take what we want. If your primitive species interferes, we will burn your Earth as an example. We will turn your cities to glass and your oceans to steam. We will make sure no one in this galaxy even remembers your kind existed." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have 30 days to remove all human presence from the neutral zone. If even one human ship remains, we will consider it an act of war, and we will respond accordingly." The hologram flickered off. The chamber remained silent, stood alone, surrounded by 200 species who would not meet her eyes. She gathered her things and left without another word. 12 hours later, on Earth, President Han sat at the head of a long table. Around her were the most powerful military and political leaders humanity had ever produced. The recording of threats played on a screen behind her. "Options," she said simply. Generals spoke of defensive positions. Diplomats suggested appealing to the council. Economists warned about the cost of war. Everyone had something to say. Admiral Park sat at the far end of the table. He was an older man with gray hair and a face that showed nothing. He had commanded Earth's fleets for 20 years. He had never lost a battle, and he had not spoken once during the entire meeting. President Han noticed his silence. "Admiral Park, you have been quiet. What are your thoughts?" Park stood slowly. He looked around the table at his fellow leaders. Then he looked at the screen, at the frozen image of Overlord laughing. "They have made their choice," Park said. His voice was soft but clear. "They chose to threaten our children. They chose to call us animals. They chose to promise our destruction." He paused. "Now we make our choice." "And what choice is that?" the president asked. Park's eyes were cold. "We show them what animals can do." The room erupted in arguments. Some called for caution. Others demanded immediate action. The debate lasted for hours. In the end, President Han made the decision herself. The next day, every communication channel in the galaxy carried the same message. It was broadcast to all 200 Council worlds, to every ship in every fleet, to every station in every system. President Han stood before the camera, dressed in simple black, her face calm and composed. "To the Dominion," she began, "you have threatened humanity with extinction. You have promised to burn our world and murder our people. You have given us 30 days to submit or die." She paused. "We do not submit. We accept your declaration of war." She let those words hang in the silence of space. "To the Galactic Council," she continued, "you sat in silence while a member species was threatened with genocide. You offered no defense, no support, no words of caution to the aggressors. We understand. We are young. We are weak. We do not matter." Her eyes hardened. "Remember that you made this choice, and stay out of our way. This will be over soon." The message ended. Across the galaxy, species who had never given humanity a second thought suddenly became very interested. Elder of the was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. She had lived for 3,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched species destroy themselves and others. Very little surprised her anymore. But as she watched the human president's message, something cold settled in her stomach. Something she had not felt in centuries. Fear. She turned to her attendant. "Find me everything we have on the humans, every war they have ever fought, every weapon they have ever built, every conflict in their history." She paused. "And find me information on their home planet. I want to know what kind of world creates a species that responds to threats of extinction with such calm." Her attendant hurried away. Elder turned back to the screen, where President Han's face still lingered. "What are you?" she whispered to the image. "What did that death world of yours create?" In the depths of space, far from any planet, lights began to flicker on. Hidden bases that had been dark for decades suddenly hummed with power. Ships that the galaxy did not know existed began to wake from their long sleep. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they first met alien life. They had smiled and traded and played the role of harmless newcomers. But they had never forgotten the first lesson Earth taught every creature born on its surface. The universe was dangerous, and only the prepared survived. Overlord wanted war. He would get one, but it would not be the war he expected. It would be so much worse. The Galactic Council believed they understood humanity. Their files said Earth had approximately 50 combat-capable starships. Their intelligence reports described human military technology as adequate but unremarkable. Their experts agreed that if war came, the Dominion would crush humanity within weeks. Their files were wrong. On the 5th day after President Han's declaration, factories across Earth and its 12-colony world stopped making consumer goods. Within hours, they started making weapons. Assembly lines that had produced vehicles now produced tanks. Electronics plants now manufactured targeting systems. Shipyards that built cargo vessels began constructing warships at a speed that made galactic observers gasp. Dr. Shin was Earth's chief. She understood alien species better than anyone alive. Now she stood before a group of ambassadors from neutral worlds who had come to observe humanity's preparations. "How is this possible?" asked one ambassador, a creature with blue skin and compound eyes. "Your industrial output has increased by 300% in 5 days. Our economists say this should take months." Dr. Shin smiled politely. "Your species builds things when you need them. Humans build things before we need them, and we store the knowledge of how to make more. Every factory on Earth has emergency protocols. Every worker knows their wartime role. We have been practicing this for generations." "But why?" the ambassador asked. "There has been peace in this region of space for centuries." Dr. Shin's smile faded. "Earth was never at peace. Not really. We have been fighting each other for our entire existence. War is not something new to us. It is something we have spent thousands of years perfecting." The ambassadors exchanged nervous looks. They were beginning to understand something terrible. Humanity had not been living in peace for the past 89 years. They had been waiting. Across human space, recruitment centers overflowed with volunteers. This confused galactic observers more than anything else. Most spacefaring species used professional armies. Soldiers were trained from birth, modified for combat, programmed for obedience. The idea that ordinary civilians would choose to fight was strange to them. And Diplomat asked Sargent about this. Was a veteran of Earth's ground forces, a hard man with scars on his face and cold eyes. He commanded a unit called Ghost Company, known for their brutal effectiveness. "Why do your people volunteer?" they asked. "They have families, jobs, lives. Why would they choose to die?" Looked at the alien for a long moment. "Because it is our home," he said simply. "The threatened our children, our parents, our friends. Every human knows how to hate someone who threatens the people they love. That hate makes us strong. But you could negotiate, find a peaceful solution." Shook his head. "They called us vermin. They promised to burn our world. There is no peaceful solution anymore. There is only war, and we will win it because we have more to lose than they do." The diplomat wrote in his report that humans were more dangerous than anyone had realized. Not because of their technology or their numbers, but because every single one of them was willing to die for their home. On the 10th day, Admiral Park called a meeting of Earth's military high command. The room was filled with generals and admirals, the best military minds humanity had ever produced. A massive holographic display showed the known positions of forces. "Intelligence reports say they are mobilizing 400 warships," said one general. "We have, according to council records, 52 combat vessels. The numbers are not in our favor." Admiral Park nodded slowly. Then he pressed a button on his console. The holographic display changed. Instead of 52 ships, it now showed over 2,000. Hidden bases appeared across human space. Secret shipyards revealed themselves in asteroid fields and behind moons. Fleet after fleet emerged from the darkness where they had been hiding for decades. The room fell silent. "We never trusted the galaxy," Admiral Park said quietly. "From the day we made first contact, we knew this moment would come. Some species would see us as weak, some would try to destroy us, so we prepared." He looked around at his stunned officers. "For 89 years we have been building, hiding, waiting. Now the waiting is over." One admiral found her voice. 2,000 ships. How did we hide this from the council?" "We lied," Park said simply. "We showed them what they expected to see. A young species with a small fleet, harmless. And while they ignored us, we built an armada that could challenge any power in this region of space." He turned back to the display. "They expect to fight 50 ships. They will find 2,000. And every single one of them is crewed by humans who remember what Overlord said about our children." Far from Earth, Captain stood on the bridge of her ship, the Silent Wrath. It was a stealth cruiser, designed to be invisible to sensors, built for operations behind enemy lines. Her crew was small but deadly. They were about to fire the first shot of the war. Their target was this primary communication relay, a massive station that coordinated all military communications for the Dominion. Without it, fleets would be blind and deaf, unable to coordinate their attacks. "Distance to target?" asked. 200 kilometers and closing, her navigator reported. "They still have not detected us." Smiled. Human stealth technology was better than anything they possessed. They had no idea the Silent Wrath was creeping toward them like a ghost in the void. "Weapons ready. All missiles armed, targeting solutions locked." Took a deep breath. In a few minutes, she would start a war that would change the galaxy forever. She thought about Earth, about her family and soul, about the children who would grow up safe because of what she was about to do. "Fire," she said. The missiles launched silently into the void. Seconds later, the communication relay exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal. Before they could even understand what had happened, the silent wrath was gone, vanishing back into the darkness. 4 hours later, the entire communication network was in ruins. 6 more relay stations had been destroyed. Fleet Commander, leading the armada toward human space, suddenly found that he could not contact his. He could not coordinate with other fleets. He could not even confirm that his orders were still valid. He sent scouts to investigate. None of them returned. Ambassador received the footage from a spy drone the next day. It showed Earth's hidden fleet emerging from their secret bases. 2,000 ships, their engines burning bright blue, moving in perfect formation toward the war zone. He watched the footage 3 times. Then he forwarded it to every member of the Galactic Council with a single message. They have awakened something ancient, something hungry, something that has been waiting for an excuse to show its true face. May the stars forgive them for what is about to happen. May the stars forgive us all for ignoring the warnings. Elder received the message in her private chambers. She had finished reading the reports on human history, the wars, the weapons, the atrocities they had committed against each other, the resilience they had shown in the face of extinction. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to God she had not believed in for 1,000 years. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake, and humanity was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Fleet Commander had served the Dominion for 40 years. He had fought in 12 wars and never lost a battle. His armada of 400 warships was the most powerful force the Dominion had ever assembled. As he approached the neutral zone where human forces waited, he expected an easy victory. He was wrong. Admiral Park waited for him with 800 ships, not the 2,000 humanity possessed, but enough. Park had studied tactics for years. He knew they fought with honor, in neat formations, following rules that had governed galactic warfare for. Humans had no such rules. The fleet arrived at the Nexus Gate expecting to find a small human force ready for honorable battle. Instead, they found chaos. Human ships did not form neat lines. They scattered across the battlefield, hiding behind asteroids, lurking in sensor shadows, appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. Ordered his fleet to engage. His ships moved forward in perfect formation, as they had always done, as every civilized species fought. Admiral Park smiled when he saw this. "They are fighting the war they prepared for," he said to his officers. "Let us fight the war we prepared for. All units, execute Pattern 17. The human fleet did something had never seen before. Instead of meeting him head-on, they scattered even further. Small groups of ships attacked from every direction at once. They struck at his flanks, his rear, his supply vessels. They used asteroids as shields, hiding behind them and emerging to fire before disappearing again. Ships could not lock onto targets that would not stay still. His formations broke apart as captains tried to chase enemies who refused to stand and fight. His communications were jammed, his sensors confused by thousands of decoy drones that looked like real ships on his screens. 6 hours later, had lost 180 ships. Admiral Park had lost 40. The commander ordered a retreat. For the first time in 40 years, he had been defeated, and he still did not understand how it had happened. On Prime, a small human mining colony, the ground war was even more brutal. Forces had landed 10,000 soldiers to occupy the colony. They expected the human civilians to surrender. They expected to raise their flag over human buildings and wait for the war to end. Instead, they found Sergeant and Ghost Company. Had arrived 3 days before they landed. He had spent those 3 days preparing. Every building was rigged with traps. Every street was a potential ambush site. Every civilian who chose to stay had been given a weapon and basic training. They landed in daylight, marching in neat columns toward the colony center. They never reached it. The first explosion killed 30 soldiers. The second killed 20 more. By the time the commander realized what was happening, his forces were scattered across the colony, fighting shadows they could not see. Ghost Company did not fight like soldiers. They fought like hunters. They attacked at night, striking quickly and vanishing before they could respond. They used the colony's tunnel systems to appear behind enemy lines. They left traps that killed soldiers hours after Ghost Company had moved on. They were warriors bred for open battle. They had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that refused to show itself, an enemy that turned every street into a death trap, an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. 3 weeks later, 10,000 soldiers were dead. Ghost Company had lost 200 fighters. Sargent stood in the ruins of the colony center, watching the last survivors surrender. One of his soldiers asked him if he felt any satisfaction. Shook his head. "They came to take our home, they died. There is no satisfaction in that, only necessity." Across the galaxy, species watched the war unfold with growing horror. They had been considered a major military power. They should have crushed humanity in days. Instead, they were being systematically destroyed by a species they had dismissed as vermin. Elder addressed the Galactic Council. Her voice was heavy with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. "I have completed my study of human history," she said. "What I found terrifies me. This species has been at war with itself for its entire existence. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own world. They have survived ice ages, plagues, and famines that would have ended most species. Their planet tried to kill them every day of their evolution, and they survived." She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. "We thought they were primitive because they were young. We were wrong. They are the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen, and we let them into space thinking they were harmless." No one argued with her. The evidence was on every screen. Human ships hunting vessels like predators hunting prey. Human soldiers turning occupied territory into graveyards. Human tactics that broke every rule of civilized warfare. Then the news came that changed everything. Overlord, desperate and furious at his fleet's failures, ordered biological weapons deployed against a human colony. The attack killed 40,000 civilians. Men, women, and children died screaming as the poison ate through their bodies. When Admiral Park received the news, he was on the bridge of his flagship. His officers watched his face carefully, waiting for his reaction. Park said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and cold. "They have used weapons of mass destruction against civilians," he said. "They have murdered our children." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all human forces. The rules of engagement have changed. There are no more rules. The Dominion ends now." Dr. Shin had spent years studying psychology. She knew their strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. When Admiral Park asked her how to end the war quickly, she had a simple answer. "They are hierarchical. They follow their leaders without question. If you remove the leadership, the entire society collapses." She paused. "Kill Overlord and the war is over." Captain received her new orders that night. She was to lead a strike force directly into home space. Her target was the palace of Overlord himself. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. There was the most heavily defended place in their entire dominion. No enemy had ever gotten close to it. Accepted the mission without hesitation. 3 days later, the Silent Wrath and 12 other stealth ships slipped past defenses. They moved slowly, carefully, invisible to sensors that were looking for conventional attacks. Overlord was in his throne room when his defense platforms began to explode. One by one, the orbital stations that protected his world were destroyed by enemies he could not see. His advisors screamed for him to evacuate. His generals demanded reinforcements that were too far away to help. Refused to run. He was the overlord of the Dominion. He did not flee from vermin. Then the silent wrath directly above his palace. Captain's voice crackled over his personal communicator, calm and clear. Overlord, you killed our children. You used biological weapons on civilians. You called us animals. There was a pause. Did you really think we would stop at your soldiers? Did you really think we would let you live? For the first time in his life, Overlord felt fear. The humans had come for him, and there was nowhere in the galaxy he could hide. Overlord ran. For the first time in his long and bloody reign, he abandoned his throne and fled like a frightened animal. His personal shuttle launched from the palace moments before Captain. Missiles turned the ancient building into rubble. He ran to his private yacht. He ran to the edge of his system. He ran toward the only place he thought might be safe, a hidden base on the far side of space where he kept emergency supplies and a small fleet of loyal ships. Captain was waiting for him. The silent wrath had tracked his shuttle from the moment it launched, had predicted his escape route. She had positioned her squadron along his path. When his yacht dropped out of faster-than-light travel, he found 12 human warships surrounding him. Opened communications. Overlord, you have two choices. Surrender and face trial on Earth for war crimes, or die in the void. Choose now. His response was a barrage of missiles. His yacht was equipped with military-grade weapons, enough firepower to destroy a small warship. His crew was loyal and desperate. They fought with everything they had. It was not enough. Ships surrounded the yacht and fired in perfect coordination. They did not aim to destroy, not at first. They disabled his engines. They destroyed his weapons. They cut off every possible escape route. For 3 hours, yacht drifted in space, burning and broken. Offered surrender 6 more times. Each time refused. Finally, a lucky shot from a dying weapons system hit the yacht's reactor. The explosion was bright and brief. When it faded, nothing remained of Overlord but scattered atoms. Watched the debris field for a long moment. Then she turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Admiral Park. The Overlord is dead. The war can end now. But the war was not over, not yet. Fleet Commander received news of his death while retreating from another defeat. His fleet had been reduced to 200 ships. His communications were still unreliable. His soldiers were exhausted and afraid. He tried to rally his forces. He sent messages to other commanders, urging them to unite against the human threat. But without its authority, no one listened. The Dominion's rigid hierarchy had been its strength for 3,000 years. Now it was its greatest weakness. Without a clear leader, no one knew who to follow. Contacted Admiral Park directly. It was a desperate move, but he had no other options. "Human Commander," he said, "I wish to discuss terms of surrender." Admiral Park's face appeared on his screen. The human admiral looked tired, but his eyes were still sharp and cold. "You wish to discuss terms," Park repeated. "Your overlord used biological weapons on our civilians, 40,000 dead, men, women, and children choking on poison your leader ordered deployed." He paused. "There are no terms, Fleet Commander. There are only consequences." Felt his hope die. "Then what do you want?" "I want your fleet destroyed, your worlds occupied, your entire military structure dismantled." Park leaned forward. "I want the Dominion to stop existing. That is what happens when you threaten genocide against humanity and then murder our children to prove you meant it." The communication ended, stared at the blank screen for a long time. Over the next 3 weeks, human forces swept through space like a fire through dry grass. They did not conquer in the traditional sense. They did not occupy cities or install new governments. They destroyed. Dr. Shin led teams that identified every facility capable of building weapons of war: shipyards, weapons factories, military academies, research stations. One by one, they were dismantled. Scientists were arrested. Equipment was destroyed. Knowledge was erased. When Galactic Council observers protested, President Han responded personally. "You sat in silence while they threatened to burn our world," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "You offered no support when they called us vermin. You did nothing when they murdered 40,000 of our people with biological weapons." She paused. "You do not get to lecture us now. You made your choice when you chose to do nothing. Live with it." The observers had no response. They had no right to one. Fleet Commander made his last stand at Prime, the of his species. He had 80 ships left, crewed by soldiers who knew they were going to die. They formed a defensive line around their world and waited for the end. Admiral Park gave them one final chance to surrender. Refused. He could not abandon his, even though he knew defense was hopeless. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships moved through the formation like wolves through sheep. They were faster, smarter, more adaptable. Every time thought he had figured out their tactics, they changed. Every time he found a weakness, it turned out to be a trap. When it was over, his flagship was the only ship still functioning. His crew was dead. His weapons were destroyed. His engines were failing. He sat alone on his bridge, watching human ships surround his broken vessel. Sergeant led the boarding party. His ghost company moved through the flagship with practiced efficiency, securing each section, taking prisoners where possible. They found on the bridge, sitting in his command chair, waiting for death. Approached him carefully. "Fleet Commander, by the authority of the United Earth Government, you are under arrest for war crimes. You will be transported to Earth to stand trial." Looked up at the human soldier. This small, soft creature who had somehow defeated the mightiest military power in the region. "Why do you fight so hard?" asked. "We are stronger than you, older than you, we should have won." Considered the question. "You are stronger," he agreed. "But you fight because your leaders tell you to. We fight because we choose to, because we remember every person we have lost, every child who died choking on your poison." His eyes were hard. "We never forget, and we never forgive." He motioned for his soldiers to take away. 47 days after President Han declared war, the Dominion ceased to exist. 6 star systems, conquered over 3,000 years, were now under human military administration. A fleet of 400 warships had been reduced to scattered debris. A civilization that had dominated this region of space was gone. Human casualties: 12,000 soldiers and 40,000 civilians killed by the biological weapon attack. Casualties: 2,400,000, including their entire military leadership, their overlord, and most of their governing class. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, orbiting the. Below him, cities were still burning from the fighting. Millions of civilians huddled in shelters, terrified of what would happen next. His aide approached him quietly. "Admiral, what happens now?" Park stared at the planet for a long moment. He thought about the 40,000 civilians who had died screaming from poison. He thought about Overlord's laughter as he called humanity vermin. He thought about every insult, every threat, every promise of extinction. Then he thought about his granddaughter, safe on Earth, who would grow up in a galaxy that now knew not to threaten her world. "Now we go home," he said finally. "We rebuild, we mourn our dead, and we make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when someone threatens humanity." He turned away from the viewport. "Send a message to Earth. The war is over, we won." The message traveled across space at the speed of light. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. On Council worlds, species who had ignored humanity suddenly looked at their own defenses and wondered if they were strong enough. And in the ashes of the Dominion, a new truth was being written in fire and blood. Humanity was no longer a young species to be dismissed. They were a warning, a reminder, a promise of what would happen to anyone foolish enough to threaten their home. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The question was whether it would remember. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Dominion. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was full again. Representatives from 200 worlds sat in their assigned seats, surrounded by floating screens and holographic displays. But today, something was different. Today, when the human delegation entered, no one laughed. No one whispered insults. No one looked away. Every eye in the chamber followed President Han as she walked to her seat. Every representative remembered what humanity had done. Every species understood that the small, young race they had dismissed was now the most feared military power in the region. Ambassador met with President Han privately before the session began. He was nervous. His 4 hands would not stop moving. "President Han," he said quietly, "I must warn you. Many species are afraid. Some want Earth expelled from the Council. Others are discussing preventive measures." President Han raised an eyebrow. "Preventive measures. They fear humanity will not stop with they believe you will expand, conquer, eventually come for them." Han was silent for a moment. Then she smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Good," she said. "Fear keeps people polite, and if any species is foolish enough to attack Earth preventively, they will learn the same lesson they learned." She paused. "We did not start this war, Ambassador. We ended it. Remember that." Nodded slowly. He had no argument to offer. The humans had indeed been attacked first. They had simply responded with more force than anyone thought possible. The council session began with Elder taking the podium. The ancient was 3,000 years old, and her voice still commanded respect from every species in the galaxy. "I have spent the past year studying humanity," she said. "I have read their history, their literature, their philosophy. I have tried to understand what kind of species could do what they did to the Dominion." She paused, looking around the chamber. "Many of you believe humans are unusually violent, that they are dangerous predators who will eventually threaten us all. I am here to tell you that you are wrong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Elder raised a hand for silence. "Humanity is not unusually violent. In fact, by galactic standards, they are remarkably restrained. In their entire spacefaring history, they have never started a war. Every conflict they have fought has been in response to aggression against them." She let those words sink in. The attacked first, the threatened genocide, the used biological weapons on civilians. Humanity simply responded. She turned to look directly at the human delegation. "We should not fear humanity. We should be grateful that they waited to be attacked before showing us what they can do. We should be thankful that they did not decide to expand through conquest when they clearly had the power to do so." The chamber was silent. No one wanted to argue with Elder. No one wanted to admit that she might be right. President Han took the podium next. She was dressed in simple clothing, without jewelry or symbols of rank. She looked like what she was, a leader who had guided her people through a war they did not want but could not avoid. "I will be brief," she said. "Humanity has requests, not demands, requests." She activated a holographic display showing human space and its surroundings. "First, we request full membership in the Galactic Council with appropriate voting power. We have proven that we are a significant presence in this region. We should have a significant voice." Nods around the chamber. This was expected. "Second, we request formal recognition of human territory, including the former systems we now administer. We did not ask for these worlds, but we will not abandon the civilians who live there." More nods. No one wanted to argue about territory with the species that had just destroyed an empire. "Third, we request a simple promise from every member of this council." President Han paused, looking around the chamber. "Leave Earth alone. Do not threaten us. Do not plot against us. Do not give us reason to show you what we showed the." The chamber was very quiet. "In return," President Han continued, "humanity will not expand by conquest. We will not attack any species that has not attacked us first. We will participate in galactic trade and diplomacy as peaceful partners." She paused again. We do not want your planets, we do not want your resources, we want to be left in peace." She let the silence stretch for a moment before delivering her final words. "But if anyone threatens us again, there will not be a council left to debate our response. Remember what happened to the... Remember that we showed mercy by stopping when we did, and remember that mercy is a choice we make, not a guarantee." She left the podium and returned to her seat. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed to humanity's requests, not because they wanted to, not because they thought it was fair, but because they were afraid of what would happen if they said no. As the session ended, species filed out of the chamber. Most avoided eye contact with the human delegation. They walked faster when passing the small group of humans who had shattered their assumptions about power in the galaxy. Only Elder approached. She stopped in front of Captain, who had attended as part of Earth's military honor guard. The ancient bowed deeply, a sign of respect that she had not shown to anyone in centuries. "Your species earned its place among the stars," said quietly. "Not through time or wisdom, but through fire and blood. I hope we never give you reason to remind us why." Bowed in return. "We hope the same, Elder. We did not enjoy what we did. We simply did what was necessary." Nodded slowly. "That is what makes you dangerous. You do not glory in war, you simply win it and then you go home." She paused. "Perhaps that is why you survive. You fight to end fighting, not to continue it." She turned and walked away, leaving to consider her words. Dr. Shin submitted her final report to Earth's government the next day. It was a comprehensive analysis of humanity's new position in the galaxy. "The Council now knows what we are capable of," she wrote. "Some species will hate us, some will fear us, some will try to become our allies, hopping to share in our protection, but no one will underestimate us again." She concluded with a question that would define humanity's future among the stars. "We showed them what we are when threatened. Perhaps now we can show them what we are when trusted. The choice is theirs, but so is the consequence." Admiral Park retired 6 months after the war ended. He returned to his family home in Korea, a small house overlooking the ocean. He spent his days tending a garden, reading books, and watching the waves crash against the shore. A reporter came to interview him on the anniversary of the war's end. She asked many questions about tactics and strategy, about the hidden fleet and the final assault on the... Finally, she asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Admiral Park, do you have any regrets?" Park sat in his garden, surrounded by flowers he had planted with his own hands. He thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the soldiers who had died under his command, the cities that still bore scars from human weapons, the 40,000 civilians who had choked on poison before he could save them. "I regret that it was necessary," he said finally. "I regret that we could not find another way. I regret every death on both sides." He paused, looking out at the ocean. "But I do not regret keeping my people safe. I do not regret responding to threats against our children. I do not regret showing the galaxy that humanity will not be bullied, will not be intimidated, will not kneel before anyone." He turned back to the reporter. "That is what soldiers do. We protect our home. We carry the weight of terrible decisions so that others do not have to. And we live with the consequences, whatever they may be." President Han delivered her final address on the war during a ceremony at the memorial for the 40,000 civilians killed by the biological weapon. Families of the dead stood in silent rows, listening to their leader speak. "They called us vermin," she said. "They called us primitive. They called us animals who did not deserve a voice among the stars. They thought we would bow. They thought we would break. They thought wrong." She looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people who had lost everything and still stood proud. "We are humanity. We survived ice ages that froze our world. We survived plagues that killed millions. We survived our own worst impulses, our own capacity for destruction. We did not crawl out of the mud and reach the stars just to kneel before anyone. Her voice grew stronger. So to any species watching, we offer friendship to those who offer peace. We offer trade to those who offer fairness. We offer respect to those who offer respect. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. But to those who offer war, to those who threaten our children and promise our extinction, congratulations. You will learn what we learned long ago in the depths of our struggle for survival on a world that tried to kill us every day. She raised her head high. Humanity does not break. Humanity adapts. Humanity survives, and humanity remembers. The crowd roared. Across Earth and its colonies, billions of humans watched and cheered. They had been threatened with extinction and responded with total victory. They had been called vermin and proven themselves apex predators. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other species watched and took note, some with fear, some with respect, some with careful consideration of their own actions. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had announced itself not with words but with fire, and the universe would never forget the lesson taught by the small, young species from a death world called Earth. They were not vermin, they were not animals, they were humanity. And they were here to stay.